Did you hear about our new sponsor, Learn It? One of the best ways to support your team is by investing in their growth through practical learning experiences. And that's exactly what Learn It delivers. Their short, live workshops focus on the essential human skills we all need, like empowering others, managing change, and team collaboration. As a Speak with People listener, you get a free 45-day trial for up to 20 people. Start today by heading to learnit.com/speakwithpeople or click the link in the show notes and start your journey to investing in providing great growth for your team. Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organizations. Each and every episode, we sit down with experts from various fields from around the world, just like you're grabbing a coffee with them, to dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So go grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. In 2025, we have 4, if not 5 generations of people living in this planet and working together and shopping together and doing all of these things where they have to know how to communicate. So when it comes to our client communication skills, how do we adapt? How do we change? How do we grow? That's what we're going to be talking about today on the Speak with People podcast, specifically when it comes to our client communication skills for the different generations. My name is Jason Raitz. I am your host. I'm so excited that you are joining us, and I would love to hear how this podcast series is going for you and your business. Please email me, jason@speakwithpeople.com. Want to hear if you have questions, want to hear if you have thoughts. And by the way, don't forget to check out all the things on the Speak with Your Client webpage because there are free resources there. Well, today I am joined by a sales legend in my eyes. He is a fantastic salesperson. He's going to tell you more about that, but I have watched him grow as a sales leader, as a sales executive, and he has done just an enormously amazing job. He's also my brother-in-law, and so I've known him for a very long time. Cory Riker, welcome to the Speak with People podcast.
How are we doing today? Yes, I'm blessed to be here. Very thankful. It's been a long time coming. I know that we've kind of been talking about getting it going, but you've been so busy with expanding yourself and talking with all different types of people. I'm just excited to kind of be on and be able to just share a little bit about me. As he said, I'm Cory Riker. I have been in sales since I've been old enough to be in it. I would say 18 years old. A lot of different things in the beginning, but primarily I come from a real estate background and currently work in the financial field as a financial professional. But I love what I do, and ultimately I love building relationships. That's one of the biggest things. Is it's always been my strength to speak with people. Ironically enough, right? But
It's true.
it's and sometimes you don't realize it when you are just an extrovert and you're speaking with people and you're talking with people. You don't catch that, like, you can sometimes captivate people and have a really intentional conversation all the time, right? I say it's one of the most beautiful but also exhausting things, because sometimes having that personality, you feel like when you're in big crowds or anything like that, you have to have an intentional conversation with every single person, right? That's one of my what do y'all call it now, red flags, or
Yeah.
weaknesses, right? I feel like I have to always dive
Slow
deep
down.
all
I
the
can't get
time.
to know everybody.
Exactly. So yeah, I love it. And to me, it's just, I think so many people miss that, have that disconnect of like truly understanding one another. And that's why it's all surface level things now. That's why I'm a weird person at my age when I go to restaurants and I actually like to have a conversation and not just be on my phone scrolling through social media while I eat my food, right? So but yeah, that's me.
I
That's
love it.
me.
And speaking to your listeners, you'll know that this is only the second time in, goodness, this podcast will be our 231st podcast. This only is the
Beautiful.
second time where we've done an in-person interview. So we really pull out the big guns when we do the this kind of interview. Now, before we hop into the questions, before we hop into the topic of really how do we connect across generations, how do we, especially I want to touch on too, for those of the introverts listening, you're going to hear from a maximum extrovert, and then you're going to hear from me, who used to be a maximum extrovert, who's now come over to the introvert side, but I've had to learn how to balance both. We're going to talk about the different generations, but you gave us a little bit of your professional career. Tell us a little bit more about you, your story, who you are, what got you to this place where you're at right now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I come from, let me just start off with is I'm so thankful for the Lord and who he's made me, the man that I am today. Let me just start off there. I want to give gratitude. Another one is I want to thank my parents, my family. I'm adopted, and so I was brought in by a beautiful family. Jason being part of that family, but uh a beautiful family that instilled God into me. And instilled very good morals and values and work ethic. And so I'm ultimately thankful for that. But I growing up obviously wasn't the easiest. In the terms of like my personal battles, what I deal with. I think a lot what makes me who I am doesn't define me, but makes me who I am is that I was adopted. I was in foster care, through adoption, and I was born with a disability called cerebral palsy, and I a lot of the times for the longest time I allowed that to identify me.
Mm.
That was my identity. That was who I was.
Wow.
And so I allowed that to speak for me and not using my own voice. And so I just didn't know how to connect because I felt like I was always being looked at under a microscope, always
Wow.
being watched and was just people assumed that I couldn't do anything. And sometimes we bring that on ourselves, right? We like to make fun of ourselves before anybody else can.
Yep.
And so I was a really big victim of that in terms of like, making fun of myself, putting myself down because I thought that, okay, if I can do this to myself, you can't do it to me.
Exactly.
But what that ultimately did is that allowed people to be like, oh, well, I can just say whatever around you. And then it was just all the time.
Yep.
All jokes. And I had to live in this realm of just a bunch of jokes on me all the time and accept it because I'm the one that started it. Right. But what that did is that began to make me just insecure and on my daily life of being social with everyone.
Yep.
And talking with people.
Yep.
I couldn't have a serious conversation. It always had to be goofy. It always had to be something about me and putting myself down in a way. And so that was something that I needed to heal from. I needed to understand what the Lord says about me, right? And how he made me and that he does not make mistakes, and grow from that. And so that was my journey of kind of getting to where I am today, and why now I push so strong to have such intentional conversations.
It's interesting, backing up in your story, because those of you who are listening to the audio, I don't know the delicate way to bring this up, but Cory, you're African American.
Yeah.
Is that? Do you say African American? Do you say black?
I just say black.
Okay, you say black. I don't know if
I'm not from Africa. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
But then you also have this disability.
Yes.
And so you were adopted into a white family.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I mean, right off the bat, that brings up a whole lot of cultural and interesting things. And then your parents now, your adopted parents now, they fostered you.
Yes.
And that's where I first met you,
Yes.
which is crazy to me because I think the first time I saw you and you were a preemie.
Yeah. Yeah.
What, 32 weeks or something like that?
8 weeks early.
Oh my goodness. So you fit like literally from the top of my finger to here. I mean, you were the tiniest. I mean, it's just crazy to think about all of those years.
Like a milk dud.
I mean, all of those years ago. But to think about, and then you mentioned a little bit in your story. So you went back into you were going to be adopted by a different family.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so they kind of started that process. And then for whatever reason, they're like, we just can't do this. And you went back into the foster care.
Yeah.
And ended up back at your parents, my in-laws now.
Absolutely.
And to make matters even crazier, and I say crazy in the best terminology ever, your parents, my in-laws, have not only fostered
they
dozens of children.
They fostered for 17 years.
Children with special needs.
Yes. Majority.
Who we sometimes complain when our kids, can't get up off the couch quick enough.
Yeah.
These are kids who couldn't get off the couch.
And yeah, and even to add on that, mind you, my parents now are 73 years old, right? And 16 years ago, adopted a fully special needs baby who only had half a brain, right?
Yep.
Was born with a disformed brain, so they had to do surgery and take part of it out. So he only has half a brain, and before the age of 7 years old, had 7 brain surgeries.
Yeah. And having you with cerebral palsy,
Yes.
having your brother Brian with severe cerebral palsy,
Yes.
totally non-functioning.
Yeah.
Having Tammy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. And then they had,
Nathan.
many biological children. So you grew up in that family
Mhm.
and learning, all of these kind of things. Where did you talked about it a little bit. Where did you, and we're going to hop into this conversation because I want to get to the sales portion of it, but
Yeah.
this early years is so important. Where do you think you finally found the freedom of your voice? Because, when you went to school, were you treated differently because you had white parents?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So definitely from a cultural standpoint, as funny as as funny as it's said, right? I would get the jokes all the time. Well, Cory, you're not really black. You're not really black. Because as of like I need to act a certain way to be a black man, right?
Right.
But and at school that happens all the time. I had my parents didn't know. My parents, my parents didn't know how to culturally take care of me. I guess you can say. You have to also understand that when my parents adopted me, they were in their late 40s, right? So my parents were almost old enough to be my grandparents.
Wow.
So generationally, there was a whole generational gap.
Right.
Even going in when we get to the meat and potatoes of like all different generations speaking to each other, that was one of the biggest, adversities was I didn't know how to communicate with my parents when I got older, a
Wow.
little bit older in my teenage years, because my parents at the time were in their 50s,
Yeah.
60s, so a little bit, right? So there was a whole gap there that was a lack of communication and understanding, not just socially, but also being a black man in a white family.
Yeah.
And so when I feel like I really found my voice, was when I got into martial arts at a young age.
I forgot about
And
that.
I trained in martial arts for multiple years. Actually, and I'm not, not toot my own horn, but I trained. The thing about it is when people, and let me speak to somebody maybe who has a disability, physical disability. We have to understand that we have to work 2 times as hard as the next one because of the maybe the limitations,
Yeah.
right, that we have in our bodies. I trained every single day for hours a day,
Yeah.
and I at the end of this and through pushing and hard work and dedication, I became the first national fighting champion to come out of that martial arts school organization. And that was when I truly realized that
Mm.
it didn't matter what people said to me. It didn't matter how they viewed me. It mattered what I say to myself and how I viewed myself.
Yeah.
Because that's what it took to get to that point.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it really instilled, shout out to PKSA martial arts, right? But it helped, it instilled that, hey, you got this.
Yeah.
You are your person,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter what people say to you.
Yeah.
People are always going to have a different opinion. That's why, that's how we're made.
Right. But with all those cards stacked against you, quote unquote cards stacked against you.
Yeah.
Right. The cultural differences, the communication differences, the age differences, the disability, you would think that maybe you would have diverted to just being more quiet,
Yeah.
more introverted, want to stay away from people. Cause I know you have heard some of the most ridiculously offensive things from people,
Yeah.
either about your disability,
Yeah.
whatever it's about. But you didn't go that route.
No.
You've gone the route to connecting with people, to building relationships with them. And
Yeah.
so through the strength of what you learned through there, it kind of set you up. So when did you know you wanted to get into sales? When did you know, oh my goodness, this is when it's going to come alive?
Well, actually, when I was 18 years old, when I was getting out of high school, obviously we were all trying to figure out what we want to do when we get out of high school. And I worked at this company where it wasn't really sales. I was pretty much just like a cashier. But the way that I would speak with people and the way that I would talk with them and build those relationships, I had regulars coming in to speak with me every single day. There was actually a gentleman that mentioned, he goes, Cory, have you ever thought about like getting into sales? Like your personality is amazing for it. right? He goes, you're not even selling me anything, and whatever you have, I want to buy, right? And so I was like, oh, you know what, maybe, right? Let me try it out.
Yeah.
I think I stepped into the company T-Mobile, right? It was my kind of like my first sales job, and I loved it
Yeah.
because I always was meeting different
Yep.
personalities all day, every day, and I was just laughing and making jokes, and I got to be myself. And so then that was just kind of like the foundation and the ground for that, and it just kind of went up from there. It kind of went up from there. I had a really big itch for development, in professional development and personal development, of just kind of growing as a salesman, but ultimately not just as a salesman, but as a person. And at that time I was very young, so I was still so naive in
Yep.
terms of what I needed to sacrifice for my success, but I was ready for it.
Yeah. So, what's really fascinating knowing you is, your dad, my father-in-law, is the most opposite than either of us, right?
Yeah.
Incredibly quiet, doesn't like people, doesn't want to be around people. I mean, a great, great man in his own respect. I mean,
Yeah.
your mom and dad have a special, you know, wing in heaven
Yeah.
because of the heart that they have. But growing up in that childhood, you didn't have the somebody modeling to you the sales, building relationships, all that kind of stuff. So when you got into T-Mobile and you're starting to sell and you're starting to realize, wait a minute, I'm pretty good at this. Did you go anywhere? Did anybody give you any type of instruction? Were you learning on your own? Was it all just, hey, day to day, just learning all these new skills?
Well, actually, a lot of people, I haven't said this a lot, but I actually give a lot of credit to my dad. And that being said, is as he was saying, yes, my dad is really he is a when you meet him, he's a very just straightforward, like totally not into people, and rough around the edges in terms of just like how he was raised. But I love him for it. But one of the things that he did and how he raised me was he didn't let me have an easy way out.
Wow.
He knew that growing up that things were going to be harder for me.
Yeah.
He knew that I needed to have grit, because that's a big thing in sales is grit, right? If sales was easy, everybody would do it, right? Right?
Yes.
And so if business was easy, everybody would do it, right? That's why there's different places for people. But one of the things that my dad did for me is that he didn't coddle me. He wasn't easy on me. When there were things that'd be hard, he'd let it happen. When I'd fall, he'd make me get up myself. When I'd hurt myself, he'd make me take care of it, because he was that much more pushing me, because he knew it wasn't going to be easy for me in the
Yeah.
future. Right. And I have to give all that credit to
Yeah.
him,
He taught you.
because I didn't understand that in the beginning. I thought he just was mad at me, or didn't understand me, or didn't get this. And there was a lot of tension between our relationship. But when I got older, I realized that every single thing that he was doing was preparing me to be able to run on my own.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I have to give that credit to him. Because I mean, at the end of the day, he loves all of his children. He sacrifices so much for the kids that he has now. And I'm telling you, like I have utmost respect for him. I can never say that to his face, because I'm a little bit prideful, and he's a prideful man, right? So I feel weak when I say. I mean, my dad thinks I'm weak if I put milk in my coffee. If it's not black coffee, I always like to say, he likes his coffee like he likes his kids, right? Right, just black. So, but that being said, he thinks it's a milkshake if it has anything else in it besides just water and beans. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but what a powerful childhood that he, you know, I don't know what your childhood was like. I didn't have cerebral palsy. For the last 20 25 years, I've had a bad back. And, bending, I used to be a runner, I did CrossFit, bending. eh, Every day is pain. Every day is pain.
yeah.
But I can't imagine, I can't remember the last time putting socks on was easy.
Oh,
But for you, I mean, that was your childhood. You
yeah.
had to learn how to do all of that and then kind of communicate through it. This may be inappropriate to ask. I apologize. Eh, When you've done any face-to-face sales and somebody's picked up on your disability, were there any awkward moments or just a moment where somebody said something that you're like, I can't
Oh,
believe
absolutely.
that?
People have said the most out of pocket, have asked the most out of pocket questions.
Yeah.
That's like has nothing to do with them,
Mhm.
right? There's there's been some crazy things being said, so it's some of them not appropriate to talk about here on camera, but I guess just DM me, I'll let you know, right? But people just, they say stupid things.
Yeah.
And if they're not sure or they're awkward or they feel uncomfortable, their questions act out
Yeah.
on those things.
And I think I want to give the benefit of the doubt to people because I think most of the time they just don't know the right thing to say.
Yeah.
Years ago I was speaking at a camp. I'm getting to know all the students over the weekend. Finally, I walk up to this young gal and I'm super excited. I'm high-fiving all of her friends. I'm like, "Hey, hey, hey." And I get to her and she won't high-five me. And I'm like, "Oh, am I not good enough? Is there something wrong with my hand?" And my typically I pride myself on my emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
but I missed all the signals. And her friends were like in the background looking shocked. And I'm like, "No, seriously, slap my hand." And she lifts up her right hand and there's no right hand.
Ooh.
Like she was missing her hand.
Ooh.
And it was just the worst. Like
Yeah.
I crumbled into a pile. I mean, it was like, how do you recover?
Yeah.
How do you recover? Like elbow, elbow, like I might have even done that because I'm like, oh, whatever. I'm here for you. But those
relief.
yes, those kind of things happen. And so I've watched you though be able to connect across the ages. Like it doesn't matter. You'll sit down with someone like my dad. You'll sit down with my dad. He's 70 years old, which is funny. Your dad calls my dad the old one. But your
My
dad's
dad's
older.
older.
Yeah, I know. I love it. But it just younger, older, you connect. What do you think leaders need in order to kind of have that communication skill? Because not everyone's born.
Yeah.
Listen, you are a way above average communicator.
Mhm.
You're a performer. I mean, the way that you sing and beatbox. I mean, all the things that you do. So you have that going for you. I'm an above average storyteller. I can do that, but not everybody has those gifts. So
Yeah.
the people who don't, what are some of the things that you believe? Okay, every human being on the planet has the ability to do this. So some
Yeah.
of those connectability things that you look for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, number one is, hey, how are you doing?
Mm.
In a genuine way.
Yeah.
Like truly, like how
Yeah.
are you doing?
Yeah.
Because the thing about it is a lot of the times when you have older generations speaking with younger generations, in their mind already, they're like, you don't know how to talk to me, or I don't know how to talk to you. Right. So it's already a preconceived notion that we can't communicate.
Yeah.
Right. But that's just because, we don't want to be understood.
Yeah.
Right. We don't want to be understood, and we don't want to understand most of the times. We want to speak. We want to speak to be heard, not listen. Right.
Wow.
And so, I love another big thing is you need to find something that you can relate with them, right? Like me, I'm not a car guy at all.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times in my career, when I would speak with older generation and I knew like, hey, they're in the cars, or I saw the car that they pull up with, I start in that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it immediately breaks the ice.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're interested in me. You're interested in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think I made more friends at T-Mobile than I did just outside of T-Mobile, because I would just have conversations with people.
Yep.
But we need to understand that we need to relate with one another, right? If you don't understand me, let me tell you something that would help you understand me, right? Let me understand you better, right? And also another one is you need to I personally believe that a lot of times we speak with our walls up all the time. We speak with our walls up. We don't, we don't open up. And it's not about you need to have a full blown testimony. Like you don't need to do that. But you need to, like, if you're not willing to, one of the biggest things that I heard was closed-minded people never get anything done. Open-minded people do. Skepticism isn't closed-minded, right? It's being open-minded and understanding what works for you. Right. So, and I love that. And that's kind of what I walk by. Also is being confident in yourself, right? When you're speaking with people, like I am confident in who I am and what I have and what I deal with. I'm not walking up to somebody insecure. One awesome thing that I heard, that really just stuck with me is if you spoke with your friends the way you speak to yourself, would they still be your friends?
Wow. Wow. So true.
And so I'm like, if I'm speaking life into myself, if I'm speaking good things about myself and I'm confident in who I am, I have that same confidence when I go and speak with somebody, no matter what age they are.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the things that I think about and hold. And also, like, I grew up always wanting to be understood. I grew up always wanted to be understood and heard because I felt like nobody would understand my situation.
Right.
Once I identified who I was and where I needed to be and what I wanted for myself, I had that same love and care and respect for other people when I spoke with them.
I love that. Okay, so for a good part of your career, you're in a store, you're doing day-to-day retail, then you move to real estate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then you're a young real estate agent.
Oh yeah, that
So
was
did you
great.
deal with any, people are like, they like took one look at your, oh, he's a young guy. He's
Yeah,
not going to know.
yeah.
Like, okay, walk us through that. Like,
Absolutely. So I started real estate in Florida. So I am originally from Michigan, born and raised in Michigan. But I when COVID was happening, literally before COVID 2020, in March, I moved out to Florida. And I took T-Mobile with me there and worked for T-Mobile a little bit. But I realized I just didn't want to be in the corporate era. I didn't like it. I knew I had the tools for myself to grow and kind of expand that way. And so my wife's mom was doing real estate and was opening up a company, and she was like, hey, you should try it out. And I was like, all right, I never thought I'd be a real estate agent, right? I feel
right,
like everybody and their mom's a real estate agent, right? They
right.
just what they do is that they get their real estate license and they post a picture on Facebook and say, hey, I'm a realtor, and then they call it a day, right? So I'm like, okay, everybody's a real estate agent, right? And I was in Florida. So you throw a rock in Florida, there's 6 agents around it, right? So I was like, hey, let's try it out. And she really, my mother-in-law really coached me
Mm.
and walked me through that process because it was a new industry for me, but I fell in love with it because, now I'm working in, higher ticketed sales and like higher sales, but also I'm meeting tons of people. I'm going to networking events. I'm going to, market myself at these places. And I believe in COVID, it was crazy for me. I mean, I thought I wasn't gonna sell properties right away. Right off the bat, I was selling, you know, it was like crazy. It was COVID sales, Those of you that have been in sales during COVID, you understand, right? COVID sales, it was beautiful and I loved it and I thrived
Mm.
during that time rather than isolate. And so that was kind of what started my journey.
Wow. So already I've heard you've had, uh, a dad, a mother who's poured into you, now a mother-in-law who's poured into you. You've
Absolutely.
had great coaching,
Yeah.
throughout the years. So what do you think some of the biggest mistakes are when people go to sell someone that's older than them? Like what are some of those key, like, we sabotage the sale because of whatever these are.
Well, I think it goes both ways. Rather than just the salesman, I think also when you're young and you're trying to talk with somebody older, they immediately think that they know more than you.
Mm,
Right. A lot of the times, and my real estate agents, you'll understand this, is when you're in real estate and you're speaking with somebody, they'll be like, well, I was in real estate 15 years ago. I understand the game. It's
right,
like, well, that was 15 years
right,
ago. Even if you're a real estate agent 2 years ago, still not the same game
right.
because it's a constant changing industry. Right. So I think that is number one, right? You need to stand your ground, right? And assert your professionalism. A lot of people back down from their professionalism, and that's what gets them
Wow.
caught up, right? They don't stick up for their career. Do you believe in what you're doing as a real estate agent, right? Are you confident in the work that you're doing? Are you up to date on the area that you're in, the market that you're in, right? Because if you're not, I mean, it's a cutthroat game. You're either in or you're not.
Lots of real estate agents out there.
Lots of real like listen, they should make a real estate dating site because that's how many real estate realtors there are.
So your communication skills, if you're continually working to improve them, you're really going to stand out then.
Absolutely. You're gonna remember me.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I wanted you to remember me. Like I wanted you to. There was something that I did. Like I thrive in comedy. Right. I love making people laugh. That's one of my biggest things.
Yeah.
So I was always cracking jokes and going back and forth. But on the other hand, aside from that, I was asking you how you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, how are you doing? What's going on? There was times that sometimes I would forget about the sale. And I would just be so invested in the person, right? That and it still worked out because there were so many times that people told me that people that I worked with, I enjoyed working with Cory because he made it feel like we were just friends looking at a house,
Mm.
and I love that. because that's my goal. That
Yeah.
was my goal, right?
Wow. Boy, that's it. And that's really that's the heart of where you want to get to,
Yeah,
especially with your client communication skills.
absolutely.
It's like there's a movie out there. It's probably 10 years old now, Kevin Hart. Um, but his business is guys can pay him to be their best man at a wedding.
Yeah.
Because a lot of guys struggle with friends, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, I can pay you to do this. And by the end of it, the guys were like, yeah, we're buddies, we're buddies. And he's like, well, this was kind of a paid transaction, but it still kind of does that. Like, we have this opportunity, to kind of build those relationships. And if we can make it feel like we're in it for them, because really the best client communication is serving our
Yeah.
clients.
That's what a leader does, is serves.
So when it comes to younger, so now, it's not that you're way up there in age, but
No.
you're not a spring chicken anymore.
Oh, not a spring chicken.
So when it comes to now, connecting with the younger generation, are there any things that you walk into doing? Do you try to
Yeah.
use all their hip words? Do you try to
No.
do those things?
I don't know any of those hip words. I don't even know. That I was playing basketball with some young kids in South Carolina, and they were saying things I had never heard of in my entire life. And they're not even that much older than me. They're like 20 years old. What, 6, 7 years, right? They're saying all this stuff. I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, they call me Unk. That's what they call me, Unk, because I'm old now, right?
Now you're the old one.
But I think one of the biggest things that working with younger people is stop selling out of your own pocket, right? Don't assume that these people, because they're younger, they don't got money, or they don't got their stuff together.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a big part on a lot of people who are older. Like, oh yeah, well, I'm working. There's times I'll be talking with agents. They're like, I'm working with this young couple, but I don't know how it's gonna work out. You're already killing the sale in your head. Right? Stop assuming. I know people who are younger than me that they're doing better than me. Right?
Yeah.
There's some hustlers out there, right? And so stop thinking from your own pockets.
Yep.
Stop thinking from your own pockets, and stop thinking that because you're older, you know more or doing more than them.
Wow.
Right? Focus on yourself.
Yeah.
If you say that you're the best salesman, and you have that, and you speak that edification to yourself, you believe it, right? But you're not better than anybody.
Right.
Right? So,
wow, that's good. Okay, so when it comes to so you did real estate, now you have kind of keep transitioning, and you've done financial advising, work in the financial field, and then by the time this episode airs, we've already made the announcement, but you're going to be working with Speak with People as well.
Yeah.
Doing some sales as our sales director with our training programs and getting some of that stuff out there. And so when it comes to digital stuff, online stuff, do you have any advice for people who, they're making the calls, they're trying to connect with over Zoom?
Yeah.
What do you bring to the table for that?
So one of the biggest things that works for me, right? And this is just, it's all based on your sphere, right? I come from a really good sphere of business owners, salesmen, saleswomen, right? All sorts. But in terms of like social media and how I act on that is sometimes I'll post some crazy stuff on social media in terms of like just silly things. But the thing about it is that I'm consistent with it, and people keep up to date with me, right? I did this whole thing of pouring my milk before my cereal. Everybody hated that.
I did.
Right?
I did.
They hated that.
I hated it
with a T. But did you remember it?
It was rough. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
It was rough. But I had nightmares about it. It stuck with me for weeks because I'm like, nobody does that.
Hey, listen, all my people that pour their milk before their cereal, I love you, right? But this is the thing. People always want to be in your business, right? They always want to be in your business. You want to create curiosity all the time. I'm always creating curiosity on my social media. There's times when I would just post something, and I get like 6, 7 DMs. Cory, what are you doing? What's going on? What's going on? Right? Those creates conversations. Also, it opens up the door. They asked you, now the ball's in your court. Right? So how are you going to handle this? So my biggest take on social media and what I like to do in speaking in that in my market and focusing on my sphere is not saying so much that people make a decision behind a screen. They come and speak to me, or I get to have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. You said something in the very beginning. Let's go back to, but you talked about grit.
Yeah.
Grit. Because sales, client conversations, developing relationship with clients, it really isn't for the faint of heart.
No, absolutely
like
not.
You have to be able to be beat down, told no, not be responded to, ghosted.
Can you handle the word no?
That's it. So how do you think you prepared? Like, how do you think you got prepared through all of your learning, growing, training? And where has that kind of got you now?
Yeah, well, one of the best things I think my mother-in-law said to me the very first time, and this is like, I mean, she said it right in the very beginning. She said, "Cory, do not get attached to the outcome.
Oh, wow.
Do not get attached to the outcome." And I held on to that because the thing about it is a lot of times when people get a sale, they put all their eggs in one basket. This is my baby, right? This is it, right? Also, as a leader, you need to understand, as a leader, your job isn't, if granted working with clients, right? But just in general to your sales team, as a leader, your job isn't to make them feel comfortable.
Mm.
Your job is to make them feel uncomfortable. One of the best things that I believe John Maxwell said, and which stuck with me, is be comfortable with living an uncomfortable life because then you can be comfortable.
Mm.
Right? When you are uncomfortable, you grow. A goldfish only gets as big as the bowl that you put it in. Right? So as a leader, you need to push your team. Right? You need to challenge them. Right? You need to get them into places where they're uncomfortable, because when they're uncomfortable, they'll grow.
Yeah.
Adding to that, right? Adding to that, if you're afraid to lose them, if you need them, you can't lead them.
Mm.
If you need your people, you cannot lead your people.
Yeah.
Right? You need to be able to create that separation of your friend, and you're loving, and you're a loving friend, and you're there,
Yep.
but you're also a leader.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the biggest things she said, don't get attached to the outcome. So I never got attached to the outcome. I get a no, I keep going. Right? One tactic that I saw that was really good, I'd make a lot of cold calls. Right? Cold calling was a thing in real estate. A lot of people say, "Oh, I hate cold calls. They don't work." Well, just get over it. You're just afraid to talk on the phone. But one of the times is I'd make 30 calls and then I'd get a sale. And based on that sale, then what I would do is I would take that number of the money that I made and I'd divide it by the number of calls that I made. And that's how much money I made per call.
Yep.
That I did.
Wow.
Right. So that was another look that I did. And then also too, like, you're gonna get told no.
Yeah.
If you're it's a general thing.
Yep.
It's an all-around thing. If you're gonna step into an industry where you're talking to people and you're wanting something for someone, you're gonna get told no.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, it's good advice. Okay, so we've asked everybody a part of this series this question. So if we're going to speak with our clients and not at them, here's the one takeaway, the one call to action that we need to remember from this interview today would be what?
we never remember today. So, if we're gonna speak with our client, not at them, I'm just kind of
I love it.
what you said.
That's great.
Right? If we're gonna speak with our client, what at them? What is one thing that we're gonna take away?
Yeah.
Today, right? Well, I would say, don't get attached to your outcome.
Yeah.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? And number two, right, is become uncomfortable. Not for your client. Don't make your client uncomfortable, but you become uncomfortable, because then you handle your clients better because you're growing. You're actively growing.
It's so
right?
good.
Another thing, listen, I love John Maxwell. That's why I quote a lot of him, right? But John Maxwell said this thing. He said, a lot of people have upward goals, but they have downward habits.
Whew.
Right? I love that so much, because as salesmen and saleswomen, right, we have our habits. We have our things that we're locked in with. And if you become comfortable in those things, you're doing yourself a disfavor.
I love that.
You always can grow.
That's so good. Okay, as we finish, we're going to ask you some rapid fire questions. We ask every single guest these questions. We're building an online communication library. So listeners, as you know, if you go to speakpeople.com/skills library, you can see all of the different things, all the different ideas that have been brought up by all of our different guests. So hopefully we'll encourage you, give you ideas, stuff like that. But we talk about speakers a lot on here, Cory. Who is a speaker that you've consistently heard that you go, whew, boy, every single time I hear them, they fill me up, they motivate me. I've got to tell other people about them.
Well, not being biased and not kidding, I love when you speak, right?
Wow.
Your speaking is amazing to me.
Well, thanks.
Done a lot, right? Love when you speak. Number two, John Maxwell by far. Love John Maxwell. Another one that I love so much and that I listen to and tune into a lot is Ed Milet.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big Ed Milet fan. And then Tony Robbins. I'm a big Tony Robbins fan, but I listen to Ed Milet more. And then, oh yeah, Tony's amazing. And then which helped me in my real estate career, a lot of their business principles. But there's another gentleman that I love to listen to and tune in. which I'm blanking on his name right now. So,
Well, maybe remember for this question, if you're a podcast listener, is there a guilty pleasure or development podcast that you listen to regularly that you highly recommend to other people?
well, yeah, I forget the men that do this podcast, but there's a podcast out there called Rich Habits,
Hmm.
right? Love that podcast. It's on Spotify. Rich Habits. It's actually the man that invented silly bands back
Huh.
in the day. Those
Yes.
silly bands, those rubber bands that people would just put all the way up their arm. He's on them. He's on that. And then there's another young entrepreneur who's on there as well.
I love that. We'll research it. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Last question. Is there a book? You're meeting with someone. They're like, yeah, I'm going to go get stranded on a desert island. You got to take this book. What book?
By far, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Ah, yes.
That is the best book ever.
Absolutely.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
I love it. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you for sharing more of your story. Thank you for your transparency. Where can people find you online? Where should they go to get more information?
Oh yeah, well, I have my Instagram, which is Cory Riker, right? Just that's simple. My Facebook, which is Cory James, James, and that's kind of what I'm rocking with right now.
Perfect. We'll
Right.
we'll go ahead and put those in the notes and make sure that we get that. But thank you for this time. Appreciate you pouring into this series and for your time to speak with people.
Sweet, thank you so much. Appreciate being here.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Speak with People podcast. It means the world to us when you share this episode. Thanks for liking, subscribing, or following the podcast. That really does help the podcast get into more ears and into more leaders listening. Also, don't forget, we have 2 exciting resources for you. The first is go to Facebook and join the speakers group. This is a community designed for leaders who want to grow their communication skills. Also, go to speakwithpeople.com/skills library to access the Communication Skills Library. It is an online resource chock filled with resources that will inspire you and transform you and grow your communication skills. Thanks again for being a part of the listening community. We cannot wait for the next episode.